Welcome to Get Deck EDH, Alec here. Today we're jumping right into deck tech for Mirri Weatherlight Duelist. This is a Aura Voltron deck, enchantress, so we're going to be running a lot of auras and a lot of enchantresses. This is a fun type of deck. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to have some secondary blockers and attackers. So after this intro, I'm going to dive right into a summary of the deck, what types we're running, how much of each, and then go into the mana curve and the ramp and what we're running for costs. And then we'll go into a deeper play test, which I'll play some hands out, and we're going to see what we're looking for on our mulligans, what we're trying to draw for, and how the whole engine works. And then after that, I will go into deeper on the specifics of what we're looking for when it comes to protection, when it comes to ramp, when it comes to attacker blockers, and the whole strategy of it all. So hope you enjoy this video, guys. I put a little bit of work into it. Um, Other than that, let's dive right into it. All right, so here we are, jumping right into it. I just want to go over a brief overlook of the deck. So this is a low CMC aura deck, obviously. We have about 35 and plus enchantments, not including the creatures. So the whole goal of this deck is to get your draw engine online. It has a heavy foundation of a draw engine. It's 11 permanents that consistently draw you cards, all relying on you casting or having an enchantment enter the battlefield. So that's extremely important because that's how we're going to steamroll value through our low CMC auras that we have packing this deck. We have three ways of recursion, one of them being flashbacks, Savine's Reclamation. We'll get through that in a bit. Um, 5 universal buffs for enchantments. That's going to be our backbone. So enchantments like All That Glitters, ones that give you +1/+1 for each enchantment on the board. Those are going to be huge because that's how we're going to make Mirri really big for really cheap because those usually cost 1 or 2 mana. So that's going to be pretty big. And then we have 5 cost reducers in this deck, which is going to make our 3-drop, 2-drop auras, and then our larger enchantments that are going to give us value over time a lot cheaper. We are going to be hitting some good numbers. Essentially, we want everything to cost 1 in the end. That's the end goal is we're just rolling out cards left and right, nothing stopping us, and then we swing for the fences, take out whoever has the most possible way of dealing with us. That's how we're going to play this deck, is that we are going to essentially missile down someone at a time. But you'll also see that we'll be able to hit more than one person at once, but we'll get into that in a second. So first, let's get into the deck. We have 20 creatures here. Some of these are the cost reducers, and we also have some backbone or secondaries. So essentially, we'll have Mirri, and then we'll have another creature that we enchant casually in order to keep a good, strong blocker. Because when Mirri is tapped, only one creature can attack us. So we just want someone to absorb that damage, and then if we need to, have that other creature go and swing out with Mirri, and in case we can't get through like we would like to. So that's an important strategy to keep in mind, is that we're building Mirri up, and then when we built her up enough, we can start building up our secondary. But let's get down to the stats right here. So we got a curve right here, and as you can see, it's very low CMC. We are mostly packing. We have 10 permanents with 1 mana value, 16 with 2, and 25 with 3. We only have 2 permanents with 4, and then 4 permanents of 5. And then 1 of 8, which is Eldrazi Conscription, because that card is nuts. But let's get down to our mana cost and what we got going on here for what we're producing. So currently we are running 57% white and 57% green with a 6% of colorless, which is fine, normal. So we are almost evenly split here. We can produce about 64% of our mana can be produced to white, 58% to green. So that's a pretty good, that 6% difference isn't going to matter. We're going to be hitting our stuff pretty good. And then back up here, I think I skipped through this. So we also have 6 instances, 2 artifacts, 35 enchantments, and 33 lands. We're running 33 lands in this deck, 2 of them being MDFCs, just because those MDFCs are great. So I definitely inserted them in there, and they can take up 2 slots. The MDFCs are Shazari Shelter. Ugh, it's a tongue twister. And then we have Strength of the Harvest, which is another buffer. They're going to be doing our universal buffs here, which is how we're going to be winning the game, essentially, is with cards like All That Glitters, Ancestral Mask, you know. So let's get into a playtest, and we can start really looking at these cards and what kind of hand we're going to look for when we start it up. So discard, and then we're going to do a fresh restart. Alright, so let's look at this hand here. Not good. But we can keep restarting until we're not doing a mulligan video this time. We're trying to show the case what we got here. Alright, so we have a hand here, and you can see, like I said before, we want to be mulliganing into a draw engine. We want to get that going ASAP. We have two ways of drawing in this hand. We have Citizen Champion, and we have Eidolon of Blossoms. Eidolon of Blossoms and Citizen Champion are going to be huge because they count ETBs, not cast. We're not doing a lot of cloning or duplicating or anything of the sorts that would matter so much for that, but I just believe that's a more guaranteed ability when you're in this type of instance. Obviously, with recursion stuff, that triggers on ETB, but no cast trigger depending on the card. But I personally just enjoy the ETB ability. So we have Citizen Champion and we have Eidolon of Blossoms. These are two great ones. When an enchantment enters, Citizen will get buffed. This card is when I was talking about a secondary enchanted creature. Citizen Champion is one of those because she is going to get buffed every time you play an enchantment and draw you cards. So she is on her own just going to get larger and larger as your turns progress. So she is definitely one of those secondary enchantresses that is going to be taking the brunt of all the attackers that are going to be coming at you, or the one attacker, which is why Mirri is so great. And in case you didn't know, I'll read out Mirri really quick while we get into this. Whenever Mirri Weatherlight Duelist attacks, each opponent can't block with more than one creature this combat. As long as Mirri Weatherlight Duelist is tapped, no more than one creature can attack you each combat, which is so great. Like, that is great control, combat control. And she has first strike, so we definitely want to take advantage of first strike. That is huge. And we're going to be focusing more on stacking her with abilities that say trample, protection, or flying. There's not too many flying in this deck. You're going to see why, but there's definitely plenty of trample to get her to punch through. So in this scenario, with this hand, we would draw for turn. Perfect. We have a Herald of Pantheon. This is one of the cost reducers that I was talking about. If you watched my mulligan video, then you know what I got into about that, but pretty much I'll run over it again. I believe cost reduction is better than ramp because, say I ramp up one land, that's one more mana. I'm up to 5. Say I started at 4, I'm up to 5 now. I do a cost reducer. I still have 4 mana. I pay the cost reducer. All my enchantments, because like I said, this has over 35 enchantments in this deck. Each enchantment now costs 1 less. So say I have 4 mana, but I have 1 cost reducer out. All my cards lose 1 mana. I could be essentially ramping 5 times. Essentially. I'm reducing the cost, but I have more mana to play with now because all my things cost less. So I am a strong believer that cost reduction is huge. So in this turn, we would draw, and then we have a fortified village. The land base is definitely a requirement land base. I don't usually like to run really expensive lands or like fetch lands even too much. So I generally will run, I think Temple Garden's the most expensive land in this deck. These other ones are like $5 or less, so I think they're great. All I have to do is reveal a forest. We have a forest, we reveal it, comes in untapped. We're good. We can't spend it anyway, so if it were to enter tap, doesn't matter. Like I said, I think there's like maybe 2 or 3 tap lands, not including the MDFCs, so you won't play those between turn 1 and turn 2 to get the most bang for your buck. You don't want to be slowing yourself down. So say we'd play that land, we'd go to turn 2, looking good still, play a forest. We can get these boots out, because we want Mirri to be protected ASAP. As soon as we can get her protected and untouchable, the better. And we're going to be relying a lot on Umbras. You're going to see Umbras a lot in this deck. I put quite a handful in, and I also have the lady that gives all of your ores Umbra armor, which is awesome, because Umbra armor is, if that creature were to be destroyed, destroy that enchantment instead. Huge, huge protection there, because it's going to make people not want to try and remove her. They're going to say it's a waste. So you're going to definitely tickle some buns with that maneuver. So turn 2, we would get that Swift Boots out. Now we have cards like Ghostly Dancer in this deck, because this is one of the recursion that I was talking about. Cost 5 mana, it's one of our more expensive ones, which is fine though. We need something to be able to cast, right? That's expensive. When Ghostly Dancer enters, you can return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand or unlock a locked door of a room you control. I don't believe I'm running any rooms in this deck. There is a couple that you could run. There's one that creates an enchantment glitter creature, so that might be a good synergy. Definitely feel free to exchange cards out that lean into your playstyle with this deck list. But anyway, Ghostly Dancers, whenever an enchantment enters that you control, you can either fully unlock a room or create a 3/1 white spirit creature token with flying. What we're using Ghostly Dancers for is obviously the first ability is good. Say we have an aura in the graveyard, Mirri got killed once, we couldn't protect her. We can recur that. The number 2 ability though, since I told you earlier we'll be steamrolling low CMC enchantments, this will be creating you 3/1 flyers constantly. Constantly. Which you can then, because when Mirri attacks, only one creature can block. All these 3/1 flyers, they come swinging in. So say you couldn't finish someone off entirely, this is backup. And they're also great blockers. 3/1s are strong. You don't really care if they die because you're going to be making a bunch of them. So that's the reason why that card's in this deck. It's a personal choice of mine. So we'll tap 2 on this turn. We're on turn 3, so we actually have to play a land. But we'll tap 2, and then probably 3. We're going to get Citizen Champion out. Why? Because we want to, in case we start casting enchantments, we want to be able to get a bang for our buck. That would be what we would do. We go turn 4. So in this particular instance, since we didn't get to ramp effectively, we are not casting Mirri yet until we can start enchanting her. Because there's no point in her sitting around if we can't do anything. And we could definitely play her. So say we play 3. Because we do have the boots, so we can protect her. We'll pay 1, equip her with the boots. And these are decisions you'll have to make on the fly based on what's going on the board. Say someone's playing a lot of removal, you might not want to get her out in case they have open mana and you're scared of something. This is all things you got to think about when you're playing a game, is looking at other people's board states to make sure they're not going to interact with yours. Then we would swing Mirri. That's the big thing about this deck, is you want Mirri tapped at the end of each of your turns. You don't want her sitting up. You want only one creature to be able to attack you. That's where the power gets into your hands and you feel the safest. Especially when we get cards like Ghostly Prison and Sphere of Safety, which are going to make creatures that are attacking you cost more to attack. So we're just kind of discouraging people from wanting to even mess with you while you build up essentially your missile of a commander. So Mirri's equipped. We would go to turn 5. We're feeling good. We just drew an Ancestral Mask. This card is important because this is probably our strongest card in the deck. Cost 3, but let me tell you why it's the strongest. Because enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. Not just your enchantments, everyone else's. Say you're playing against, I was playing against an Ariette Charmed Apple deck the other day with this Mirri, and they were playing auras, of course, because that's what she does. So they had a bunch of auras on their board as well, and not too many on mine because they weren't giving them to me because I was benefiting. And Ancestral Mask made Mirri up to like past 40 something. It was like she was like 42, 41 because of her. It was nuts. So definitely this card you want to play. You want to make sure Mirri's protected when you play it, because otherwise she's going to get targeted because she's going to get massive. So on turn 5, we have a forest to play. Let's play it. We'll tap 2 for Herald of Pantheon. Remember what I said about cost reduction? So now let's go back to our hand. Remember I said instead of ramping 1, we're going to ramp several times, essentially? Now Ancestral Mask that costs 3 costs 2. Eidolon of Blossoms that costs 4 now costs 3. And then Borrowed Time that costs 3 now costs 2. So originally we had 10 mana cost within our enchantments in our hand. Now, remove 3 from that, we have 7 cost. So that's a 3 mana difference in what we can accomplish in our turn. Honestly, in all senses, we're going to get Eidolon of Blossoms out. Why? Because we want to start drawing cards. Citizen Champion's out, so when Eidolon would enter, you would draw. When Eidolon enters, you would draw. Both of these trigger. You just drew 2 cards for playing 1 creature. This is the value engine. We're getting it going. It's starting to chug. We drew into cards like Seal of Cleansing. Seal of Cleansing is great. And you see Borrowed Time over here too. You're starting to notice that we are running removal through enchantments because it works with our synergy. It synergizes. There's also a Soul Snare in this, which is awesome in this deck, but you can start to see the value. And we also have a Mesa Enchantress ready to go on the board for more card draw. So we're going to start churning here. We would obviously swing with Mirri on the turn. Citizen Champion would get a counter, and then we'd move on. Now we're on turn 6. Everything's looking real solid. This is obviously if no one's interacting with our board. So keep that in mind when you're playtesting this or you're viewing this, is that people are going to maybe try to interact with you. But if you can see, all we're doing is drawing cards. We're not scaring anyone yet. They're saying, oh, that's a lot of value, but more than likely, at turn 6, someone else is being a lot scarier. We got Ghostly Prison, though, which means we have defense, which is huge. So first, we have Ghostly Dancer in a hand. That's going to take us a whole turn. We're going to be down a whole turn. But we know the turn after, we will be popping off. So I know it feels bad because Ghostly Dancers isn't being affected by our cost reducer. It's not going to trigger our draws. But we have to take this one hit of a turn in order to our next turn to be exponential. And another reason why Ghostly Dancers is in this deck, because I did put Aura Shards in this deck. It's an enchantment, and whenever a creature enters, destroy a target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, or anyone, to be honest. And that's going to, with Ghostly Dancer, it's going to ripple effect. You're going to be able to clean out any problem cards on your opponent's boards. And it's the meanest card in the deck, but it's one of the best. Anyway, we play Ghostly Dancers. We go to turn 7. This is when we can start cooking. So we have a Sun Petal Grove. We can obviously play that. And now we are turn 6. We have 6 mana available to us with a cost reducer of 1 on the field, and we're on turn 7. We missed 1 land drop, but that's okay because we've got the cost reducer, which is exponentially propelling us forward. Now we can start planning it out. We could play Mesa Enchantress, but currently I don't think we need to because we have 2 draw engines and we don't have a Reliquary Tower out yet. And that is our only way of getting no max hand size. I didn't put in a Thought Vessel. You can definitely consider doing that. But like I said, the whole goal here is to kind of steamroll. And a Thought Vessel is a good idea, definitely pluggable, but I just left it out because it didn't synergize. So first, we're probably going to want to get Seal of Cleansing out because it's a 1-drop and we can kind of see what our next card's going to be. So Exotic Orchard we'll assume can tap for a white. We'll play Seal of Cleansing. Trigger, we'll get a counter, we'll draw 2. We'll gain 1 life off of Herald of Pantheon, and then we'll also make a token. So we would make a 3/1 Spirit token, and then draw 2. Alright, we're getting somewhere. And then we can, after that, see, we're definitely going to want this Ghostly Prison out. And you can also see why I'm waiting for Ancestral Mass, because right now I'm baiting. Say someone had a counter spell up or some type of way to interact with my board. I want to save my best card for the last card I cast. So I started with Seal of Cleansing because it's not that scary. It can slide through, and it's me testing the waters. And then I went through with a Ghostly Prison because if someone's going to counter something, it's probably going to be that. People hate Ghostly Prison. They hate paying taxes. I hate paying taxes, but we do it anyway. And so Ghostly Prison would definitely, hopefully, trigger out a counter from the blue player at the table. Say nothing happens with Ghostly Prison. We go through our triggers. We get a counter. On Citizen, we draw 2, and we get another Spirit. So now we have 2 3/1 Spirits from casting 2 spells that cost us a total of 3, and we've drawn 4 cards and gotten 2 counters on Citizen Champion. You see the value? It's getting out of control. Alright, now we have some fun stuff here. So we just drew into a Rancor. This is how we get through. Trample and First Strike. It's again almost, you're going to hit most of the times unless they have a huge blocker. But we'll tap 1 green. It's already cost 1, and then we'll enchant Mirri with Rancor. Then you start to see we're going to draw 2, get a counter on Citizen, gain a life, make a Spirit, starting to gain the value of it. Now currently Mirri is a 5/2. Then we can tap 2. And then we can play Ancestral Mask targeting Mirri. And this is when it's going to get out of control because remember, this counts all enchantments in play. I'm going to just be counting what's on my board. So first things first, Citizen, counter, Spirit, draw 2. Alright. Now let's count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 enchantments in play. So Ancestral Mask is giving Mirri +10, and she's also getting +2, +0 from the Rancor. So she's getting +12, +10, which currently sets her at 15, 12. She's a 15, 12 right now. That's big. Let alone if we got double strike on her. That's big. So obviously, we're going to swing at someone. We gotta get through. And then this is when whoever you've been swinging at earlier, say you were getting through to someone, you could pick someone off right about this point. We're on turn 7. You've probably been hitting some people. You can definitely do that. So say you do. You swing through. You just took someone out. Lights are on you now. You are now in the hot seat. People are getting a little concerned because you just out of nowhere became the threat. And Citizen Champion, after that turn, is now sitting at a 6/8. That's a hardy blocker. And you have 4/3/1 tokens. That's great. We are just keeping like a fortress. We're building a fortress and we're sending Mirri out. She's our courier, but she's also a warrior. And she's just slaying down, taking out our enemies. So we would obviously have to go to discard at the end of this turn, which is fine. We drew a bunch of lands, pitched those lands. Like I said, they're expendable. So we'll pitch probably 2 4s. Bring us down to 7, and we'll go turn 8. Alright, we got some more cards here. So what can we do? I think first we'd play our land per turn, a reflecting pool, and we could also wait. We could draw. Say we're trying to find that reliquary tower, we could wait to play our land until we absolutely need to. So for the sake of that argument, let's keep that out of play. Do we want to draw more? I don't know. First though, let's make a cost reducer happen. We'll pay 2 for Starfield Mystic. Our enchantment spells now cost 2 less. That's awesome. So this Gift of Immortality costs 1. Borrowed Time, 1. You can start to see the shtick. We have 3/1 drops now in our hand just from playing these 2 cost reducers. So if we pay 1 for Gift of Immortality, which is going to give Mirri +2/+2 again from Ancestral Mask, and make it so if she goes to the graveyard, she gets to be returned with Gift of Immortality at the end step. So that's awesome. This is how we keep her on the board and avoid paying commander tax. Same with Savine's Reclamation. That's another way. If we draw into that, I'll showcase how that card works. Just trying to go over how this gameplay looks and how you would value off it. So Mirri, we play Gift of Immortality. We do all our triggers. We draw 2. We get a counter. Made the Spirit. Now here we go. We just drew into Bear Umbra, which means we can start steamrolling for real. We're going to tap 2. We're going to cast Bear Umbra. Cost only 2 mana. We're going to target Mirri. Gives her +2/+2 whenever she attacks, untap all your lands, and gives her totem armor. So not only does Mirri have hexproof now, Gift of Immortality in case a board wipe were to happen. Now we have Bear Umbra, so if a board wipe does happen, we can destroy the Bear Umbra instead to keep Mirri alive, and then Gift of Immortality can do its work after that. Huge. So once again, counter, Spirit, gain a life, draw 2. We got Destiny Spinner. Destiny Spinner is great. It's an enchantment creature. Creature enchantment spells you control can't be countered. Same thing with Kutzel over here. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. You're trying to make your turn the safest place you can be. If that makes sense. And then after that, we have 1 mana available. We can cast another enchantment if we want. How about we cast Destiny Spinner just in case someone wants to counter something on our turn. So we cast Destiny Spinner. We get a trigger because she's an enchantment. Draw 2. Not bad. We still haven't played a land yet this turn. I don't think we're going to hit, so we're going to play... Oop, that's not a land. Play Reflecting Pool. For combat, we can cast 1 more. Hey, say we want to remove a creature that can do some damage to us. We'll cast Borrowed Time, draw 2, make a Spirit, get a counter, and we just got Sanctum Weaver. Sanctum Weaver is huge in this deck. She's going to produce you so much mana, and there's a card I have in here, an aura called Instill Energy. I'll go over that because its uses are essentially for Sanctum Weaver or your secondary attacker. But we'll get into that later. Regardless, we are now ready to swing. Let's calculate how big Mirri's gone through this turn. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 enchantments. So that's 18, 18, plus 18, plus 18. And then we get plus 2 from the Bear Umber, so that's 20, 20. And then the Rancor gives another plus 2. So currently Mirri is a 22, 20, plus 3, 2, 25, 22. She is huge. And she's going to hit. We would go to combat, we would swing. Citizen Champion is big enough now. And we have all these spirits. So this is kind of where we should be winning. Everyone's life should be low enough that we should be able to essentially win at this point in the game. But say something happens, someone's gained life, they got extended, they have combat tricks, whatever, we would play through this. But generally we have 21 damage with the spirits, 10 with Citizen Champion, and then Mirri herself is, like I said, I think it said 25, 22, I don't know, something along those lines. 25, 23. And then we would untap all our lands with Bear Umbra. So you're going to be doing a little bit of math in this deck, but that's alright. It's usually cumulative. Just keep track of it with a d20 or something on your board. And then we'd go into our second main. We're going into our second main untapped. Huge. And then we can play cards like Eidolon of Countless Battles, another secondary creature. You can also bestow it. I love this card. Gives your creatures plus, it gives itself or the creature you enchant +1/+1 for each other creature in an aura you control. So currently with all the auras, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that'd be 19, 19. That'd be huge. Yeah, that'd be huge. So definitely would want to play that. And you can see how we win the game now, right? We've built up value. Once we have in a safe space where we feel we can start lunging out aggressively, we then build Mirri up, accrue more value, and then keep swinging, keeping her nearly unkillable. Perfect. It's a not perfect, but it's a great game plan. It works. Her biggest enemy is exile. That is the thing you're going to be worried about. That's where the hexproof comes from. So you definitely want to be conscious of exile, especially if someone's playing like when creatures die, they go into exile because Mirri can protect against being destroyed and she can protect against being targeted. But like exile is usually going to get through to most things, especially if it's like a farewell or something along those lines. But let's do another quick little run and looky-loo at what we got going on here. So in this hand, same shtick. We have 2 draw engines here. We have Mesa Enchantress, just draws when you cast an enchantment spell, and then we have Pearl Ear, which makes your enchantment spells cost less for how many auras you have. It gives your enchantment spells affinity for auras, and then when you cast an aura spell, it targets a modified permanent, so a permanent already enchanted or with a counter or something like that. You draw a card. So not only is this a cost reducer, it's a draw engine. So Pearl Ear is awesome in this deck. It's like less than $1. Definitely worth it. And then we have Bountiful Promenade, Forest, and a Rogue's Passage. This looks like a pretty stable hand because I know we just need to start getting out these creatures. We should be drawing in the stuff. So say we drew for turn, it's a Path to Exile, play the Bountiful Promenade, we'd pass. Forest, nothing we can do there, so we'd pass. Sunpetal Grove, ooh, that's a tough one because it comes in tapped. Play a Rogue's Passage and hope we get a land next turn. And we tap 3 for Mirri. Go to next turn. Nice. It was worth the gamble. Play a Sunpetal Grove, reveal a forest, put it back to our hand. We have 4 mana available. Let's get a draw engine out. Tap 1, 2, 3. And then let's cast Pearl Ear. Pearl Ear will start getting us cost reduction. And then we can go from there. Once we can get cooking, we're on turn 5. Now you can see we're kind of running out of enchantments to cast. That's alright, because we're going to still build. It's alright to build. It's not bad to start off slow. And I want to iterate how important that mentality is because it means you fly under the radar. You ever been in a game and someone was missing their land drops and people kind of just left them alone? Like they'd get a measly combat trigger off them here and there if they had no creatures, but for the most part, they're not getting packed full of all like the aggression that comes from the people who are taking control of the game. You get taken advantage of a little bit, but you're not going to be swung at all the time. So that's important to know is that if you have a slow start, don't sweat it. Just act like you're helpless. But know that you're building, and that's the important part. So we'll tap 3. We'd get enchantress out. We're starting to cook here. We'd swing with Mirri if we could. It's turn 5, so we're getting late into the game here. We have 2 mana available. Can't do anything with it. Go to our next turn. Get a plains, and then this is when we're going to try and get a little bit more value here. We're going to tap out for 5, and we're going to cast Spear of Safety. Creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. This is, as you saw in the last play test, we went through this. There's going to be a lot of enchantments you control on the board. When creatures it starts to cost their controller 10 to swing, you're in a good spot to not be swung at. People hate paying extra mana for stuff that they shouldn't have to. So that's going to be a winner. We're going to draw a card. Canopy Vista. It's a land. It's alright. We have 1 mana available, which we could hold up for a Path to Exile. We'd swing in. This is kind of a slow start. We could probably consider this game to be not really going anywhere. But anyway, we'd play a Reliquary Tower, land for turn just to get it out. And you can see what would happen if we didn't get into our low CMC enchantments. We weren't able to steam value. It's turn 7 and we missed out on that. And that's a bummer. Should we have mulliganed for a hand with at least something to cast? Sure. But you also don't know what you're going to draw into. So you got to keep that in mind. Drawing is the most important part in this deck. Next is the low CMC auras that you're going to be able to cast, so then you can get value. But regardless of that, we'll do a quick rerun and consider that a non-bow. So this hand's looking a lot more safer. This would be a decent keep. This is a safe hand. We do have 1 card draw here. We don't have any targetable enchantments, but we do have plenty of ways to ramp and Temple of Plenty to sift the first card that the second card we'll draw in the game. So say we keep this. And Season of Growth is great because whenever a creature enters, you scry 1. So this will allow you to kind of sift the top, and then whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, you draw a card. So all those aura targets is going to draw you cards in this. So we play Temple of Plenty. It'd come in tapped. Well, we draw a card first. Enchantress's Presence. That's great. Play Temple of Plenty. We'd scry 1. It's a forest. I think we're good on mana. We can bottom that. We go turn 2. Another plains. We get 2. We'd probably go right into the Nature's Lore. Get ourselves a forest card, which will get a Temple Garden. Actually, I believe I have another dual type in here. Canopy Vista. We'll let that come in tapped. And the reason why when you tutor or you go search for a land or a forest card, you want one that already enters tapped if you're not planning on using it, is so when you later on in the game potentially draw, say, that Temple Garden, you can play that untapped. Just things to keep in mind of efficiency for your future turns. And then we'd go to turn 3. We have 3 mana. We just drew a Ghostly Prison, or Ghostly Dancers. Let's get Mirri out. Get Mirri out. We're feeling good. Pass the turn. Plains. No one's going to probably kill her instantly unless they know what she's going to do. You haven't played any enchantments yet, so they don't know what kind of game plan you're going on. They might think you're a cat deck. You don't know. Leave the mystery. Never tell anyone. At least I prefer not to tell someone what exactly my deck is going to do and how to stop it, because that kind of removes the surprise of my actions. Leaves you to be expected and predictable. But we'll tap, say 2 for the boost. We're just going to get them out there. I'm not even going to attach them. And I'm going to tap 3 to get my draw engine going. It changes his presence. Same thing, whenever I cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. And then we go to swing Mirri. Only 1 creature can attack. We go to our next turn. Turn 5, we play a forest. Now we can pay 1. We can pay 1 to equip the boots to Mirri. And then we pay 1, 2, and we could play. Honestly, we'd probably play Ghostly Dancers, if we could. Just because when Season of Growth comes into play, we're going to have a lot of scrying that's going to happen. So we miss out on that draw right there, but Mirri's protected. We can swing in. We go to turn 6. Nice, we got a Jukai Naturalist, which is an enchantment creature. So we're going to tap 1 and a green to cast Jukai Naturalist. What's going to happen? We're going to make a Spirit token, and enchantment spells cost 1 less. That's the important part, like I said before. We're going to draw off Enchantress's Presence into a Tamio's Safekeeping, which is just a way to protect Mirri on the fly for 1 green. And now, since this only costs 1, Season of Growth, we'll tap 1, Season of Growth. This will happen. Ghostly Dancers will trigger. We'll make another Spirit. Enchantress's Presence would have triggered on the cast, and then when that Spirit enters, we'll scry 1. That's a Wild Growth. We'll probably keep that on top. And then after that, what can we do? Sadly, not much. We're going to be sitting, and we're going to send Mirri, and we're going to chill. Go to our next turn, turn 7. So you can see this is more, the power level of the deck I would say is around a 7-ish. It can be extremely strong, or you could kind of be trying to build. With this turn, we have a Wild Growth, so that's a little bit better. We can pay 1 green, attach this Wild Growth to this Plains, so we can tap for a green and a white. Draw a card on the cast, make a token, scry 1. It's Golden Tail, probably bottom that. We don't really need him right now. We need enchantments. And then go from there. We probably have to swing out. And essentially we're just waiting to get. So we'd have 2 more draws until we get a Rancor, which is tough. This is 35 enchantments in this deck, so it's definitely reliant on what you're able to get. This is an awful hand. We'd mulligan that. This is the Instill Energy I was talking about. Target creature can attack the turn it comes into play on your side. Pay 0 during your turn, untap target creature, Instill Energy enchants. Use this ability only once each turn. So essentially what it means is you enchant a creature once per turn, you can untap that creature, and it gives it technically haste, but not haste. So that's essentially for cards like Sanctum Weaver. We don't want to be enchanting Mirri with Instill Energy because we don't want Mirri untapping. We want her to be tapped outside of our turn. So I took out Colossification from this deck because I felt like it was too slow and relying on Instill Energy to untap her. So I removed that card, but Instill Energy is still 1 mana. It can be used on cards like Citizen Champion that you swing out with, and you can bring him back as a blocker. So that's the strategy behind that. Let's go back into the main view. So now we gotta get a grasp on what we got going on here. We can start to see what the play pattern is going to look like and how we would play with it. So say your enchantments are in the graveyard. What do you do? Well, let's actually go back into here, view library. There's cards like Savine's Reclamation. If I can find the next one. And then Resurgent Belief, and then the Ghostly Dancers I was talking about earlier. We're not running heavy on recursion because we're hopefully going to be having a lot of protection. And I'll go over protection in 1 second and how we keep our board safe. So Savine's Reclamation is going to be our big winner. The reason why is because you cast it for 3, you return a target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then it has flashback for 4 and a white. So if you cast this from your graveyard, you can cast it and then copy it. So ideally, you would cast the first one. If Mirri went to the grave, you could bring her back for 3, cost her 3 mana, and then immediately, because this is going to be late game thought, immediately or the next turn, you would pay the 5 in order to cast Savine's Reclamation, bringing back 2 of your most important enchantments or auras to the field. So essentially like All That Glitters, Ethereal Armor, or Ancestral Mask, and then Spirit Mantle would be a great choice as well. Essentially any way to guarantee that you can start rebuilding. So Savine's Reclamation is great for that. Resurgent Belief is a great, if you know someone's about to board wipe, play Resurgent Belief. That way, this has to spend 2, so it only takes 2 turns, and then it will cost 2 mana as well. It will return all your enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, and as long as you have a creature on the field, all your auras will attach to that. It's a great way to just do a quick one sweep, prepare for something, or even put it down to hold your opponents at hostage to make them wait to board wipe, allowing you to take that person out before they get the chance to. So Resurgent Belief is good. It's going to get in your opponent's head. You'll be able to play with that pretty well. So that's how we're going to do that. Now, how are we going to do protection? Protection is important. And obviously, I want you to go through this list and figure out what works for you and what doesn't. But first things first, let's get into protection. So for all of our enchantments, we're going to have cards like Sterling Grove and Privileged Position. Sterling Grove is great, gives other enchantments you control Shroud. You're generally not going to be enchanting or touching your other enchantments, so it doesn't affect Mirri, but enchants almost everything else on your board. So huge card, and then say you want to sack it, you pay one, sack it, search for any enchantment card in your library, reveal it, put it on top. So great tutor, and in combination with Sabine's Reclamation earlier, you can tutor with this card and recur it with Sabine's Reclamation right after. So very useful. That's why we keep the low CMC. And then Privileged Position costs 5. It's one of the more expensive ones, but other permanents you control have hexproof. Now this is our big whammy because not only can we target anything we want to, but we can also keep it protected, and this affects everything. Your lands, everything. So great card right there. That's what we have for global protection. For private protection, we're obviously running cards like Sagittary Shelter for Mirri. Gotta put these on the bottom. And then we're also running Tamiyo's Safekeeping. So these are cheap, one-time protection spells. They're definitely great. This is what's going to be keeping her alive on the fly if you need to do something like that. And we also have Surge of Salvation, which is one of the best protection spells, I think, in mono white. Just you pay for one, you and your permanents, so yourself and your permanents, gain hexproof until end of turn, and damage that black or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn is prevented. Huge card. Same with someone's going to Blast Act. 13 damage to every creature on the board. You play Surge of Salvation, you're fine. You're safe. This card's great. I love this card. It's 1 mana. You can't beat it. Definitely highly recommend. And then go instances here. So we also have some enchantments that will be protecting Mirri, and not too many. So we're going to do Alpha Authority is one of our other ways of protecting Mirri. So it gives Mirri hexproof, obviously, and we have the Swift Boot boots from earlier. And you can also use cards like Canopy Cover if you're really stressing about protection and you want to make sure she has what you need, then Canopy Cover is not a bad option either. But for the sake of this, I've only put in a few because we're going to have a couple other ways of keeping her safe. Like I said earlier, the global enchantments will be another way. And then we also have one more in here that I have. We have all of the Boar Umbras as well, or not Boar Umbras, but Umbra Armors that we have. So we have Bear Umbra. We obviously have Boar Umbra somewhere in here. Those are going to be huge protection. I also had Dog Umbra in here at one point just because it allows you to enchant an opponent's creature and make it so it can't attack or block, and then also gives yours Umbra armor if you were to target your own. But I cut that just because it was only doing that, and I wanted the enchantments to be more universal. Then we also have Snake Umbra in this as well. So we have a couple ways of keeping Mirri really safe and alive. And then Gift of Mortality, of course, is a great recursion type. So these prevent it from being targeted. These, if it does get targeted, allows you to keep her around or recur her. So important. And then after that, let's go into our secondary enchantresses, or secondary attackers slash blockers. So we obviously have cards like Kutzel, which is great. We can buff him up no problem. We also have the Golden Tail Trainer. So Golden Tail Trainer is another great one. This one's going to make your auras cost less, equal to its power, and whenever it attacks, other modified creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is its power. So say you have all that glitters in your hand, you already have a couple of those effects like Ethereal Armor and Ancestral Mask on Mirri. You could put in all that glitters on Golden Tail and just exponentially buff your creatures that you want to swing out with. So Golden Tail is definitely a great card in this deck. It's going to make your attacks that much stronger and essentially weaponize the rest of your creatures on your board. So say you even have weak creatures, Golden Tail makes them all huge if he's huge. So that's important. We have Aura Gnarlid. Now Aura Gnarlid is a unique card. I love this card. Creatures with power less than Aura Gnarlid can't block it, and then it gets +1/+1 for each aura on the battlefield, including everyone else's auras. So huge, kind of like Ancestral Mask, in which it counts all enchantments. This counts all auras. But its first ability is the big part because this guy's going to get exponentially bigger. We can obviously enchant him with something else too if we need to, but he is almost unblockable. So that is awesome. He's going to get big quick, especially the more enchantment auras you put on Mirri. So Aura Gnarlid's a great card. I love this card and definitely think it is good in this deck. And we also have obviously the Citizen Champion as another secondary because she's going to be getting progressively larger as we play. And these are just a couple of the cards I have for being our secondary. Then obviously Eidolon of Countless Battles is another one because you can either use it or don't. You can enchant one of your creatures or you can put him as his own creature. And then Catilda, Dawnheart Martyr is great. She was actually one of the commanders that I took apart to build this deck. So obviously she gets her own slot in there. Her power and toughness are each equal to the amount of spirits or enchantments you control. So she does actually synergize with the Ghostly Dancers, which is awesome. So say you do have these both out, she's going to be way bigger than she could have been with just the enchantments. And then if she is to die, she gets to turn over for her aura side, which is great. So she has, she's not only a blocker, say she gets removed, you can then attach her aura to Mirri or another creature and make them large as well. Excuse me. And then, so yeah, Catilda's great in this deck. And then honestly, I think that might be it for all of our secondary enchantresses. I'm just doing a double check here real quick. Oh, my bad, I almost missed Core Spirit Dancer. Another huge one. Gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. And then whenever you cast an aura spell, you draw a card. So not only is she part of the draw engine, but she can be a great blocker / attacker. So definitely we have some power in this deck. These are, 7 creatures that can get exponentially huge. And that's what we're all kind of thinking about here is we're trying to grow our board. Everything's trying to grow, spread out. We're trying to make a huge board state off of just value. So everything, the synergy in this deck is like everything synergizes with each other, and that's the whole goal. Is we don't want any lack of synergy, any dead cards that just we play. So I don't even have an Arcane Signet in here. I have a Soul Ring, but that's about it. No Arcane Signet, nothing of that sort. But these are our secondary attackers / blockers and enchantresses that we're going to be using. And then obviously for ramp, we have cards like Sanctum Weaver. We have other cards like Mirari's Wake. So this will make our mana tap for 2. Great. And it gives our creatures +1/+1, so it's a buffer as well. Sanctum Weaver obviously taps equal to the amount of enchantments you control. This is where Instill Energy comes into play. Say you have 10 enchantments on the board, you tap Sanctum Weaver, Instill Energy right here would allow you to untap Sanctum Weaver once. So you produce 10 green, untap Sanctum Weaver, and then it will let me. And then you can tap her again for another 10 white. So you can get a lot of mana that way. And then we have all of the enchanted lands, or not all of, but we have the cheap ones. So we have Wild Growth. We have Fertile Ground. And then we also have Utopia Sprawl. You can add in more of these, of course. So those are going to be essentially, these 3 right here are going to be the ones we're going to be hoping to draw in our first 7, because these will allow us to make our lands tap for more mana, which is, and it also synergizes with our whole enchantment plan. So it's these are great additions right here. Can't have enough of these. If you want to add more, feel free to. And then we'll also have for ramping, I have one more thing. I got Nature's Lore. And Nature's Lore will be our other traditional ramp. So this will just be in case we need a dual land or to fix our mana for any reason. I love Nature's Lore. Out of the Rampant Growth, Farseek, and Nature's Lore, Nature's Lore is the best because if it's also in Plains, it's going to be also a force in this deck because we're in Selesnya. So it's a great card. It comes in untapped if the card allows it to. So Nature's Lore is definitely my preferred ramp spell for 2 mana. And then we have our cost reducers. So this is how we're producing mana. But our cost reducers are where it's going to be picking up the extra heat. So what do we got for cost reducers? Jukai Naturalist. We got Herald of the Pantheon. Oop. And then we're going to also have, like I said earlier, Golden Tail Trainer falls into the cost reduction. And then Pearl Ears also is going to fall into a similar category where it plays 2 roles, being our draw engine and our cost reducer for our non-aura enchantments, which we don't have too many of, but we have enough that this will have some place. And then we also have Starfield Mystic. And I believe there is another. Da da da. Yeah, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope, I think this is all we have actually. So we have 5 cost reducers, which is huge. That's going to keep, remember, I told you exponential. So these two have their own variable cost reducers. So this one's going to deal with our auras. This one's going to deal with our enchantments. This one's going to deal with all of our enchantments, including both of those. Importantly, though, is Golden Tail is scalable, and so is Pearl Ear. So their cost reduction is scalable, while this is stagnant. This is only ever going to be 1 cost reduction. So these 2 cards are going to put in a lot of weight, even though it's a specific situation they're putting the weight into. Together, they round out your cost reduction pretty much portfolio. So this is how we get to steamroll out, is with these cost reducers. And we like to play these strategically before we play enchantments, so then we can keep getting more value. So that's how we're going to be essentially casting for free, and that's our way of ramping. This is how we're working around only playing 33 lands, is we have a bunch of cheap, synergizable ramp spells or enchantment auras, and then we have cost reducers. And that's how we're going to be getting through this. So now let's go back to the deck and essentially talk about another way of protection too that I missed and forgot was Spirit Mantle. That's how we're going to protect Mirri against creatures and get her through an important way of doing that. And for removal, we're not running too much removal. Like I said, we're going to be running aura shards for artifact enchantments. We have a what you call return to nature as well, and that's just going to be target artifact or enchantment or exile target card from a graveyard. And we also have a sheltered by ghosts and a, where's the other one? A borrowed time for dealing with more pesky enchantments or permanents that we don't want to deal with. Synergy. That's the main goal of this deck, is to synergize and be efficient and steamroll value. I use that word steamroll a lot because it's essentially how it happens, is it's just going to keep compounding and keep going forward. Nothing's going to get in your way, hopefully, as long as you round out and you practice this deck. Other than that, guys, I think I've gone through it pretty thorough. I also forgot to mention Birds of Paradise as a ramp spell. That is part of it. But beyond the point, I think you guys get it. You guys should look through this. Let me know what you think. If there's anything you'd rather see in place of it, obviously, let me know if you would like to see a budget version of this deck, even though 255 sits around like pretty good budget, but obviously you don't need to have expensive cards to win. You just need to have the skill to play the cards. So let me know what you think. I had fun making this deck and tooling it out. Mirri was one of my first decks. Built her as a cat, Voltron deck, and it's fun to see her take a different form and get to play that, especially more later on in my Magic career. But other than that, take care, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll do a quick wrap up at the end and go from there on what we're going to do next. So. All right, that was Mirri Weatherlight Duelist deck tech. That was a fun one. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Please like, comment, subscribe, the whole 9. I appreciate it. Other than that, I wish you guys well. Next up is going to be Yoshi and Kedis. I'll start working on that later this week or early this week, depending upon time. I definitely have a heavy work schedule, so we'll plan around then. But other than that, enjoy your guys' time. Take care, and see you on the next one.